Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you all for joining us for the Windows 365 AMA for our June edition, the last of this cycle. So just very excited for y'all to be here. Some of us it's summer, some of us it's winter, but we just have some fun news, and hopefully we can answer all your questions for Windows 365. I'm Christian Montoya, your host here, and I am joined today by 4 awesome guests. And so let's just have them introduce themselves, kind of the areas they work on, and then hopefully they'll get things started before I make some more announcements. So Derek, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Christian. Hey, everyone, I'm Derek. I work in mostly Windows 365 and AVD security side of things. So a lot of things I deal with secure by defaults, trusted launch and confidential VMs offerings for Windows 365 and AVD. And that's kind of really where my focus is at.
Awesome.
And I'm Jordan Marchese. I'm a product manager on Azure Virtual Desktop, Windows 365. My areas of focus are around the redirections. Basically, how do we take peripherals, connect them to the local endpoint, route them through to our remote. And that's both for peripherals and then what we call like device state reflections, things that you need from the device, like battery, location, etc. And looking forward to talking with y'all.
Hi, I'm Paul Collins. I'm a product manager in the Windows 365 and AVD team as well. I generally look after connectivity for the service, currently working on a lot of simplification for our connectivity and improvements around there, some of which hopefully we'll share today.
Yeah, and I'm Serena. I also work on the Azure Virtual Desktop and Windows 365 product management team, and I specifically work on AVD Remote App and the newly announced Windows 365 Cloud App feature.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'll kind of jump into that, and excuse my camera zooming out. That's fine. But going back to what Serena said, one of the many announcements we made in June is the Windows 365 Cloud Apps. So with Cloud Apps, we can deliver individual apps to users instead of the full desktop for Windows 365 users. So Serena will be here to talk about it. Go check out that blog right now, ak.ms/w365 Cloud Apps. Take a quick look and bring your questions in. That way you can get a better understanding of it while Serena's here. Another thing that we announced earlier this month was new security settings that are configured by default for Windows 365 Cloud PCs, such as disabling select redirections. So Derek is here again. He'll be able to answer any of the questions you have, and you can check out his blog. That was ak.ms/w365 secure by default blog. And then one of the other kind of big announcements that we had in June is that our Microsoft Teams optimizations are coming to mobile. I know we had Rishi on our AMA back in April, and so the optimizations for iOS and iPadOS just went out to preview, and the optimizations for Android will be out very soon. So those are kind of the big 3, and then you can always see what's new with Windows 365 if you go to our What's New page, which is our ak.ms/w365 What's New. Perfect. So again, check out those 2 blogs in the meantime, and hopefully that'll get all the questions ready to go from you. Let's start this question actually, and now in the Q&A portion. This is for I think this is for Paul. I've seen communications from Microsoft about preparing for new turn relays. Could you tell me more on what these are and what do I need to do within my environment to prepare?
Sure. A very timely question, actually, because they're just starting to roll out now. But we sent communications about that a little while ago, which I think is what's been referred to here. So what turn relays are, they're part of our expanded network infrastructure, and it's probably best if I give an example of how we use these and what the benefit of them is. But essentially, they are servers that Microsoft are deploying to 48 locations around the globe. And what they do, what they refer to as the service front door, they bring the edge of the service as close as possible to your users. So if you have users in India, they can connect to a turn relay in India. If you have users in New Zealand, you can access a turn relay in New Zealand, and so on. So what this enables us to do is bring the latency from your end user in India, as that example, very close to that turn relay. Allows for UDP-based RDP connectivity to flow through. And what that enables us to do in the back end is then use that turn relay across Microsoft's global backbone to connect to your Cloud PC or your session host, wherever it may be in the world. So if you have to deploy Cloud PCs for your India users in the US, we control that traffic for you on our global backbone from India via that service front door all the way to the US and then back again, which is one of the key elements there. So we're rolling that out to 48 regions around the globe, and that should be finished hopefully within the next month. It's on a dedicated single subnet that we've acquired for this, which enables you to do much simpler optimizations. So in the communications we've sent out, we have the detail around that, and that just means making sure you treat that traffic the same way as you would Teams media traffic, for example, and locally egress it, don't put it through proxies, etc. But a very long-winded answer to that question, but it'll bring great improvements to the availability of UDP connectivity across the world.
Awesome. And just for my sort of naive question, how does the dedicated subnet help? I know you said like you admins or probably networking admins would do something with that, but what exactly does it help with?
Yes, good question. So we have two types of connectivity. TCP based, that's our primary, and we connect via global gateways, which act in very much the same way as I just described for the relays. And we've just moved that into a dedicated subnet for that infrastructure. So that's a single subnet. It doesn't change very often. And the same goes for the turn relays. The benefit of that is it's dedicated to Windows 365 and AVD. What that means, I mentioned about optimization, and that means bypassing your secure web gateways, your VPNs, your proxies, your inspection, because it's very, we want that traffic to be hitting the Cloud PC and back again in the most efficient way possible. So because those subnets are dedicated to our service, you can do that reliably, knowing that there's no other elements within that subnet that you're bypassing your security for that could get around your intended security for egress. So it allows great simplification. The RDP, once that's rolled out, will be on 2 dedicated subnets to the service, and they shouldn't change on a regular basis either. As I say, we have 48 regions for these turn relays, but there's many more. There's multiple ones in each location, but it means we can always add more without you having to make changes to that subnet. So there's a number of benefits from doing that. And as I say, that should be fully rolled out very shortly.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, thanks Paul for that. I think this is probably for Serena. A question from Gary or Jerry on Tech Community. How does a Windows 365 cloud app deployment compare to Azure Virtual Desktop? And why would I choose one over the other?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say the difference between Windows 365 Cloud App and Azure Virtual Desktop Remote App is very similar to the difference between Windows 365 Cloud PC and like an Azure Virtual Desktop session host. With Windows 365, you don't have to manage any of the infrastructure, right? There's no workspace creation, there's no app group creation, you're not managing your session hosts. All of that is managed by us instead. So with Windows 365 Cloud App deployment, you're just creating a provisioning policy and then publishing your applications. There's none of that in between, versus with Azure Virtual Desktop, you do have to go and create all of those management objects. I would say overall, Windows 365 is a lot more simple to use and a lot easier to use, right? That's the whole Windows 365 value prop, versus Azure Virtual Desktop gives you a lot more flexibility in your management. You can build your environment the way you want it to be.
Awesome. And is there new licensing for this specifically, or does it use some of the existing Windows 365 licenses today?
Yeah, so we are currently in preview, but in preview we are available only on frontline shared mode. So you do need a frontline license to try out Cloud Apps, and again, we're only available in the shared mode.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we actually already have some people that are very excited about the Cloud Apps feature from Gino on, I believe, Tech Community. This is awesome. We have been waiting for such a feature and capability, as required when simplifying, reducing complexity and confusion when joining multiple companies and their business applications. So already some excitement, which you could definitely bring back to the larger team. Super cool. Is there any end user difference for this for Cloud Apps? Like, do the users have to change anything about going to Windows app and launching the application?
Nope, just like, Cloud PC and Session Desktop, you go to your Windows app and you connect to either your remote app or your Cloud app on your apps page.
Sweet. Well, that's really cool. We love simplification. All right, so let's see. We'll see if we get more Cloud App questions. I'm sure we will, and we'll come back to that. One question that's for Derek. Earlier on the announcements, I mentioned that for new Cloud PCs, that there are certain redirections that are disabled by default now. Can you go into that a little bit more, and like which redirections are they, and is it happening on existing Cloud PCs or only new Cloud PCs? Can you just catch us up to speed there?
Yeah, of course, Christian. So basically the redirections that we're really targeting specifically are clipboard, drive, USB, and printer redirection. So we are targeting mostly specifically new Cloud PCs, newly provisioned Cloud PCs, but we're also encompassing reprovisioned Cloud PCs as well. So if you have any existing Cloud PC and you want to have these 4 redirections disabled by default, as long as you reprovision it, it should be able to receive these 4 redirections with the new changes to it.
Awesome. And how can customers, I guess, make sure that those are enabled if they do want those to, now and after a reprovision or a new provision? How do they make sure that they can actually allow those redirections for their users?
Yeah, if customers want to, or if IT admins want their end users to have these redirections enabled, they're able to override these new defaults through custom Intune group policies for Windows 365 basically. So as long as they go through the Intune portal, they create these custom Intune group policies, apply it through user groups or to the specific devices themselves, they'll be able to make sure that one or more of these redirections are enabled by default. That's totally up to them on how they want to, how many they want to enable through that Intune group policy basically.
Okay, so that's cool. So Intune group policy will essentially take precedent over the default we apply, right?
Correct.
So, okay.
Or the most restrictive would win, basically.
Awesome. And I think that we got a question on X. And I think we actually just covered it, which is what's the process for reverting redirections if needed. So if that answered your question, the Intune group policy, then awesome. If we didn't address your question on X, please do add clarification, and so that way we can answer that for you. Jordan, very similar to the redirection policies, what, I guess, in terms of peripherals for like Cloud PC connections, what types of peripherals do we support?
Yeah, so our goal is to support all peripherals in the long run. So if you can take a local Windows machine, plug a peripheral device into it, we want to get to a world where every single one of those works. that's a journey that we are taking. And so the way that we get there is we're looking at them in these these buckets of work. And so some of these buckets are like audiovisual devices. So like the microphone that I have here, the camera up there, like those are each individual buckets. Locally attached printers versus cloud printers are another. Scanners and these others. So we kind of are looking to see, okay, how do we solve one of these device verticals and do it in a generic way so it doesn't require end users or IT admins for having to install custom drivers, both on the client and then also on the remote Windows 365 VM. And so we're looking at these like at a vertical level to hit as many of them as possible. There will always be a world where there are super special, unique devices. And in those cases, we're partnering with the people or the companies that make those devices in order to ensure that they can have binaries running on both the client and the remote side to optimize that experience for these peripheral devices.
Cool. And I guess across, because I'm sort of thinking of like Azure Virtual Desktop, Windows 365, and then also the specific device that we released, which is Windows 365 Link. Is there any difference on the devices that we support depending on the solution, whether it's the service or the device?
Yes. And so Paul and I are on a similar team on like the local team, where our goal is to make that experience as local as possible. So whenever we build something, whether it's the turn transports, peripherals, etc., our goal is to make it work everywhere and across every client endpoint. But there will always be client endpoint operating system restrictions that might make things difficult. Like if you are on iOS versus Windows versus Android, like there will be certain things that we can or can't do based on that platform itself. And so generally from an Azure Virtual Desktop to Windows 365, we see parity from a feature perspective. It varies from the clients. With the new Link device, that I would say if you take a subset of Windows client OS devices running Windows app, the Link is a smaller subset of there, given some of the device driver limitations of the operating system.
And the hardening they've done on that device, right?
Correct. So our goal is everything, and that you start to peel off based on client endpoints, and all of that is documented on our IT admin pro websites.
Okay, cool. Yeah, the learn side and various blogs put out. Okay, awesome. Sweet. So yeah, thanks for that. Again, I'm sure we'll get some more questions on the peripherals and what we're supporting. We do have a question from the tech community from Joel. I'm in a position where we have a Cloud PC user who's currently on maternity leave. While she's away, we have a new starter covering her position. I'm wondering if there's a way to save the data that's for the person that's on maternity leave, so we can free up the license for the new starter, and then be able to restore the saved data when the previous user is returning. Does anyone know if we offer that as part of the service? Some sort of way to capture, free up the license, and then maybe restore it?
My first thought goes to OneDrive, in that as long as the user maintains an M365 license, then their data is just there and we'll sync it back when you reprovision a Cloud PC. Not my area of expertise either. I spend my time in the basement, as most networking people do. But I think you should be able to use the Cloud PC export facilities to save the image, and then don't quote me on this, but I think that might be a possibility that I'd look into. But my first thought, as I say, goes to using M365 and OneDrive as the simplest way, I'd say.
Yeah, to add on to that would handle the user data side. The local app state data, though, might be lost there. So you'll at least have your files. But we aren't the experts. I do think that there might be some other things we could do, though.
Yeah, Serena, I was going to ask, I know that you were about to jump in. Did you have any other info here?
No, I said the same thing as Paul. Save to OneDrive, right?
Yeah, because I know that because one part of our service is generally when the device gets deprovisioned, we also remove its restore points.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some emergencies where if sometimes you can file a support ticket and we might be able to retrieve it, but generally once a Cloud PC is deprovisioned, it and its restore points are all removed. Yeah, there is a way to take a snapshot of the device and save it in your Azure storage. But generally that's for the investigation and what's it called? It's like a Cloud PC under review feature, and it's not really for restoring. So yeah, it feels like sorry, Paul, go ahead.
But I'm thinking in terms of what it does, it allows you to take a snapshot of the VM, right? That's what I was thinking. Can you use that and restore that back again?
Yeah,
when the user comes back from maternity leave.
Yeah, I that's a great question. We can definitely follow up on that question because yeah, we have that snapshot capability. I don't know if we are able to actually then restore that later, or if that's mostly meant for bringing the device online for internal folks to review the VHD. But we could definitely come back. But I think the main one is definitely have files on OneDrive.
If not, it's a good scenario that we maybe should be looking into.
And it sounds like our first call up to our feedback link that we always love putting here because we do actually want to make sure that whether it's on this AMA call or any other avenue that you all can provide feedback to us. So that is the ak.ms/w365 feedback. So that was a great question, a great thought-provoking question. So if we get more information, we will get back to you. Otherwise, maybe that's a feature. One question we have. So I read about a new feature called Multipath. Can you tell us more about this and when it should be used or not used?
I think that's another one for me.
Yeah.
So it actually nicely follows on from what we were just talking about around the turn relays. In that, I mentioned we have TCP-based connectivity via gateways, so we have those distributed around the world, and then we have the new turn relays that allows for UDP-based connectivity to go around the world as well. Multipath is another layer to that, using that infrastructure that I talked about before. What it essentially does is it allows when you connect your Cloud PC, it allows us to create multiple redundant paths for connectivity via different, via multiple turn relays, and at a later date we'll add in using the TCP-based gateway connections as well. And what that means is we might have 3 connections. One is the active one via a turn relay, so all your media is going back and forth via RDP over that connection, and 2 are just sat there idle. And if we have an issue somewhere along that path, along that turn relay, whatever it may be, it gets degraded, there's an issue with the turn server, whatever, the client will realize that very quickly and seamlessly move the media channel over onto one of the backup connections via another turn relay, via the gateway, etc. So in our testing, it's in public preview now for AVD, so you can use it in your validation ring and have a look at it. But in our testing, it's providing massively higher reliability of connectivity. It allows us to manage, many different network conditions without the user having to see a disconnect to a remote session. And again, using that global infrastructure that is dedicated to the service to the full, and as I say, increasing reliability of connectivity.
And when you so actually it's a good point. Definitely check out the ak.ms/RDP Multipath public preview. I believe it's a blog that covers some of the same info that Paul was just mentioning. But Paul, I wanted to quickly ask, you mentioned it's or just to clarify, you mentioned Multipath kind of provides multiple connection points. And so by connections, you don't mean multiple sessions on the VM. You mean just different communication one of those, in case like the primary communication path, the primary route goes down.
Correct. Yeah. So there'll only be one active session at the same time, but we just have redundant paths. It's like having multiple lanes on the motorway. If one of them's congested, we move to another one and carry on at 70 miles an hour on that one. It just, as I say, it allows us to deal with transient network conditions and WAN flaps and server failures and various other things that can happen along the way between a user and their cloud PC. And as I say, in our early testing, it's showing great improvements in reliability, and it's seamless. Your user wouldn't even notice that it's happened when it does happen.
Awesome.
So something to have a look at. If you're using AVD, you can have a look at that in the validation pool, and it should be available GA relatively soon once we've fully rolled out.
That was gonna be the last question I had. Was is there anything that customers need to do to use it, or is it just kind of an upcoming default that will eventually roll out?
Yeah. So as long as you're running the latest Windows app or MSRDC, it will just work seamlessly for you. It's not something you need to configure or edit or manage. Once it's GA, it'll just work. And as I said earlier about the RDP endpoints, the key thing you can do is make sure that those two subnets we use for connectivity, so the IP subnet for TCP and the IP subnet for turn, are optimized within your network. So we've got the most efficient path out from the cloud PC to the service and from the end user to the service. And then we'll just do the rest for you automatically. So there's no config or, and it aligns with everything we try and do, especially with Windows 365, is based on simplicity. And this is a key one where you don't have to do anything. You just get the goodness once it's available.
Awesome. Hopefully I wasn't the only one that caught that Paul cares about us US folks and use miles per hour instead of kilometers per hour.
Oh, so. We use it here in the UK.
Awesome.
We're hybrid here in the UK.
Or hybrid. Oh, look at that. Look at that term. Okay, cool. Thank you. Serena, I think this question's for you. Is there a limit to the number of cloud apps that we'd be able to make available? With the way that tiles look in Windows app, it feels like it could get crowded for the user.
Yeah, so there is a limit to the number of cloud apps you can make available. I think it's very similar to whatever limit we have in AVD for number of app groups per host pool. So the limit would be on how many apps you could publish per provisioning policy. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but I know the number's in the hundreds, so like 200 to 400. So it's a really high number. I don't know how many. Again, this feature's in preview. We haven't had any preview customers hit those numbers. But again, if that's like feedback you want to deliver where we need to increase, definitely give us that feedback. In terms of Windows app, the tiles do get crowded. I know I have access to so many policies as someone who self-hosts my own feature. I usually use the filter. So I'll filter for whatever workspace that I need access to. I'll also just use the search to search for whatever specific app that I need access to. So those are two ways that you can narrow down. But if you also think the tiles need to look smaller, also let us know. Again, we're in preview, so any feedback is welcome.
And Serena, is this available for previewing it for the user? Is this available on all the Windows app clients that we have?
So for our private preview customers, again, this feature is in private preview. We are telling people to use our web client, but you can still test on other clients too. We just want to make sure all the feedback is coming in that is uniform.
Awesome. Yeah, and then there's our feedback link again. /W365 feedback. Okay. Oh, this is a fun question. Does the Windows app differentiate between things like the old Outlook and the new Outlook? And can we customize the display names of the apps?
So I'm assuming that's for me.
I think so, yeah.
So, okay, Windows app does not differentiate between any kind of app. It just pulls the icon and the display name from our backend. And so for you, that would be whatever you provide in Intune. So yes, you as the admin can customize the display name. So you can put Outlook, Outlook old, Outlook new. I will say that we do the discovery of the apps for you. So when we discover it, it'll be whatever we find in the start menu. And in the start menu, it does say Outlook old or Outlook new. So I think in the screenshot on the blog, you saw it was Outlook old. But I'll also say in session, users can always toggle the new Outlook switch in Outlook. So, that's really up to your end user if they want to use new Outlook or old Outlook.
And just one more question on the app. You said the app discovery. Is it only pulling from the start menu, or are there other ways to? Because Intune has they have their own app deployment model. Is that available now, or is it mostly based off of what's available in the image that is selected for the provision policy?
Yeah, so for our initial private preview, we're only pulling from the images start menu, but I'll say stay tuned. For our upcoming releases, we'll be pulling from other sources as well.
Okay, that's super cool. Yeah, because I know that I think we kind of seen it for Windows 365 and Cloud PCs, especially with trying to have it be simpler and really integrated into Intune. Folks love using the app deployments. So if we do offer that in a future release, I'm hoping that people will love it when we do something like that. Cool. Okay, a question from Miguel on the tech community. Is the capability of moving a single Microsoft-hosted Cloud PC from one region to another available today? We have use cases where a user might move or is in a region where they experience latency and it would be nice to move them individually. We have been deleting the CPC and having a new one spun up.
I can probably take that one. We have the Cloud PC Move feature available. I think my first answer to that would be we have the ability for you to move Cloud PCs. That's available today. But from a connectivity and latency perspective, it shouldn't generally be necessary to do so. If you have RDP optimized, like I mentioned before, we do the backhaul on our network from A to B, like I mentioned before. So, if the user ends up going on a month-long business trip to New Zealand, they can connect to their Cloud PC in North America if they so wish, as long as that RDP traffic is locally egressed, isn't inspected, isn't put through a proxy or a secure web gateway, and then we'll do that long backhaul for you. In most cases, that it shouldn't be necessary to move the Cloud PC for that scenario. We have many customers who have a requirement to have a Cloud PC near the data or application that has very low latency requirements, or they have regulatory requirements for Cloud PCs in a particular country. So the network infrastructure I mentioned before, that's designed to mitigate that particular problem as long as that RDP traffic is treated nicely on your side. But if you do find you need that for whatever reason, if they're in an area where they've got extremely high bandwidth, high latency, then we have the Cloud PC Move feature you can use.
Yeah, and I wanted to call out for Miguel who asked. Maybe Miguel, you're already aware of it, but you can confirm essentially the experience that the user is having to their Cloud PC because we provide many reports in Windows 365, and one of those, I think it's called remoting connection, and it will show the latency that they're experiencing, and I think there's different slicers for historical or for different ways to summarize. Yeah, that way on your end you can sort of confirm the observations from the reporting side. But yeah, kind of like Paul mentioned, is I would expect this move to be more, or I expect this action to be used for like a permanent move. But yeah, if it's just a temporary, business trip, conference or something, I would anticipate. Hopefully we're doing enough of our, hopefully we are making as performant as possible to connect across.
Yeah.
And let us know if we're not. But that is definitely, I know Paul and Jordan and that, your team is very, very invested in that.
Yeah, as I say, it's about using Microsoft's global infrastructure where possible. We all have a colleague that actually goes and works in Colombia occasionally, and I know he doesn't move his Cloud PC from the UK South data center. That's probably 160 to 200 milliseconds latency, and he works perfectly fine on his Cloud PC all the time he's there. And we have, as I say, we have many customers that operate with that model. But what I do see, and I'll reiterate, where that RDP connectivity isn't optimized, that's where you'll see impact. So that would be my go-to with that particular scenario.
Cool. And actually, speaking on the latency and while we're here on multipath stuff, from tech community, MS partner here, I'm working with a very large Windows 365 customer with a RDP Multipath pilot. My understanding is Multipath is in private preview for Windows 365 and public preview for AVD. Do you all have a timeline on when Multipath will be public preview and or GA for Windows 365?
It will go straight to GA, I think. Reason being, we don't have the equivalent of a validation ring externally for Windows 365, so it's not as easy to do a kind of compartmentalized test. But we're working to get that feature out as quickly as possible. We always follow a quality-led rollout, so we go through various phases of preview and testing, and then we'll go GA. But we don't have a date to share currently for Windows 365, but hopefully in the not too distant future.
Cool. Another question from tech community, from Yasmin. Are the Windows 365 machines managed in Defender for Endpoint or Defender for Cloud? Derek, do you happen to know which one?
I believe that Windows 365 Cloud PCs should be designed to integrate directly with Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. I believe that is the case here.
Yeah, that was my understanding too, because I know that we do, because of how tightly the Windows 365 is with Intune, and also there's like the entire security blade of Intune, and you can push down MDE, antivirus, policies, all that stuff. My understanding is it's Defender for Endpoint and not for clouds. I think cloud needs a lot more like Azure Resource Group, Azure Network access for things to work. So my assumption is Defender for Endpoint.
I think that's right. I just asked Copilot; it concurs with.
Well, I'm glad we're on the right track.
A subtle nod to Copilot, our friend. Actually, I do. I mean, I love using Copilot for quick things too. But yeah, we'll let you know if it's different, Yasmin. But our understanding is Defender for Endpoint. Nice. Okay, question here. When I compare local Windows experience to remote Windows experience with Windows 365, there are some discrepancies, remote audio or missing things from the quick settings, etc. How are these being addressed? Jordan, I think this is probably for you.
Yeah, I think this is on my end. So similar to I think what we talked about before of trying to get to that local experience or like local experience. Windows when running remotely doesn't behave the same way that it does locally. And in some of these cases, like there are core Windows changes on the VM side that are needed, in addition to us being our team building these, the Windows app running on different clients to feed information into there. So I think, probably the most common one we hear is the remote audio, that if you're in a Windows 365 environment and you go down and try and change your volume, instead of seeing this headphone, these speakers, you just see remote audio. And that starts to break the immersion that a user feels from within these experiences. And this is something that, our team is spending time with the Windows operating system team to, pick and choose and start to add more extensibility into the operating system so we can make these feel as local as possible. It would be one thing if it was only local Windows endpoints connecting to Windows 365, but because we also have this for all of our non-Windows clients and web clients, we have to build, or our team has to build an extensibility model such that if you are on like a Mac OS device and you're using, speakers from that device, how do those show up locally? And so there is some added complexity here. And so what we're doing as like a strategy is picking, I think, like the most common use cases of what a information worker end user is trying to do from within this. And that's where a lot of this fits into my area of making these peripherals work, because that's usually what people want to do is, oh, my camera isn't working, I need to change my volume, I plugged in this printer. So we're focusing there and then continuing to evolve as Windows continues to release new Windows shell features.
Awesome. And actually, there was kind of one follow-up here, Jordan. And I was curious on your take on it. In the kind of same June announcements, we had mentioned that for Windows 365 Link specifically, we also did some kind of integration, of sort of like local integration that Killian actually was driving, which was being able to change the monitors, like layout and resolution. And between portrait and landscape mode, etc., within the settings app. And I think that's for Windows 365 Link right now. But how do you kind of compare that to some of like the audio and the peripherals?
For sure. I see what we're doing in Link as a stepping stone for the larger Windows 365 and AVD ecosystem. We are lucky that when you're in an AVD or Windows 365 session, you can just minimize and go manipulate things on your local device. But when you are fully immersed in those Link experiences, you lose that functionality. And so Link then becomes a test bed and first place for us to build these type of integrations, integrate how we handle display and other type of these, local device configurations. And so start there and then broaden that to the wider ecosystem.
Yeah, because it is really cool to be able to change your monitors without like going to the same place that you're expecting it to. Whether it's settings app or whether it's you're talking about the remote audio with the little dial down there. Because I know that we're really focused on that in the future. So cool. I think it's maybe similar to this. So maybe between Derek and Jordan, will the default changes for new Windows 365 Cloud PCs for the security settings. So will the default changes on USB redirections disable USB mice, keyboards, webcam, and microphones?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, with the new defaults, basically the answer is no. So end users, mice, keyboards, peripherals will still work as intended, even though we are disabling the USB redirection setting. And the reason because that happens is that the USB redirection setting that we're targeting is targeting towards opaque low-level redirections. So these are for really more for niche devices that are not supported by high-level redirection. And high-level redirection really means more towards that they're redirecting the specific functionalities of these peripherals, and that's something that we're not targeting. So a lot of the common mice, keyboards, these microphones, webcam, all of these common peripherals are using high-level redirections for those specific functionalities that they're set for. And so therefore, because of that, this USB redirection that we are targeting will not impact their functionality. So end users will feel no difference and still continue to use these peripherals in their cloud PC, even with these new defaults in place, basically.
Yeah, to expand on that, like I think sometimes like concrete examples can help. So like in my local setup, I have a Stream Deck here, and how do you route that into a remote session? Like it doesn't really fit one of those device verticals that we have of, it's kind of a HID device, but also not at the same time because it has extra functionality. And so because it doesn't fit into one of those buckets of things, it gets lumped into this opaque low level, meaning in order for A end user to do this, first the IT has to enable this. Second, then you have to install the driver on the remote session. You have to do some client config as well, and then this experience lights up. And so, what we found is that for a lot of the security work that Derek is doing, like the things that fit into webcam, general HID devices, those are basic functionalities that are needed. It's these one-off weirder devices that pose those risks. Not that Stream Deck does, but you don't want somebody plugging something, unknown into your system. And so that's why, since it doesn't fit into this bucket, those are the types of devices. You can choose to route devices like headphones and things through USB, but then you have performance and other issues, which is why we leverage the high-level redirections for those.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, that makes
Yeah, and then sorry, just to stress again, basically, if but if IT admins really do feel like they need some sort of specific user flow in their day-to-day life, where they feel like, we need the opaque low-level USB redirections, right? Or they feel like they need one of the other ones. Again, just stressing that our defaults that we're implementing are or can be easily overwritten, basically through custom into group policies or GPOs. Basically, both of these do have step-by-step instructions in the Microsoft Learn docs, and basically I've attached them on the blog itself. But basically, I just want to stress that IT admins have the option, right? Like, even though us as Microsoft recommend you to not have these redirections, of course, it's up to you guys to decide whether or not you really want to implement it or not.
Yeah, I mean, I think that lines up with our secure by default in terms of just making sure that out of the box, we're trying to do everything we can to make sure you're secure. If you have custom applications or use cases, we want to make sure that you, as the admin, are in control. So, cool. Yeah, thanks for that clarification. I could definitely see at first seeing USB redirections. I'm a little scared about these keyboards. So definitely a valid question there. Okay, we have probably time for one, maybe two more questions before we kind of start wrapping up and doing our tips and tricks. So one question we have is, do we have to use Microsoft Identity Solutions to secure identity for Windows 365 devices? Ooh, finally, a question for me. I'd say yes and no. So both Azure Virtual Desktop and Windows 365, the first point of authentication for a user is Entra. And Entra in itself, when we collaborate closely with them, have continued to add features for digital access, including the integration with the reauthenticate every time feature, which forces reauthentication every within a 5 to 10 minute time frame. So we've been working closely with Entra and think that that's a really secure solution all up for user identity. If you happen to use Federation or use a third-party IDP, you can federate, and so that's definitely available. But at the end of the day, the services and the user does have to get a token through Entra. So that's why I say yes or no, because you do have to have Entra and at some point and tie the user connection there, but you can federate or offload that authentication attempt if that's your setup, if you need to. So hopefully that answered your question. If there are more identity questions or authentication questions, let me know. But yeah, we've been doing a lot with Entra. And also have a lot of solutions coming up later in the year. I don't think I can talk too much about them, but we definitely realize the needs for different use cases. I guess one of the use cases that we have been hearing lots and lots of feedback from you all is being able to invite external users into your Entra tenant and assign them a Cloud PC or an AVD desktop or remote app, and also maybe Cloud app. And so we definitely heard that, and we are working towards a solution so we can provide that. That way you can both be secure, but also be very, simplify your admin experience and not have to make you jump through hoops to provide these trusted external users access to resources in your environment. Okay, cool. So yeah, we have again, we have 4 awesome guests, so our tips and tricks might take an extra minute or two. Let's just jump to that. So I guess first off, thank you, Derek, Jordan, Serena, and Paul for being here and setting aside time, some of your morning and or afternoon. What I like to do here is, do a tip or trick, whether it's a specific recommendation of a admin policy, test this user scenario, just what's something you want our folks to take away from our AMA today. So I'm gonna put Jordan on the spot here.
I thought we were going to play Nose Goes. No, so, making a local experience and ensuring that any of these peripherals work, there isn't an easy streamlined way yet for doing this. I do think my biggest tip and trick is a lot of the defaults that we do enable, and this ties in, I think, to what Derek did with the secure by default. What we would consider the most common devices, they are on for the average user, and in majority of cases, even in high latency, low bandwidth scenarios, the experience works in the injection time in our pipeline is really, really small for these. So the places, if you are ever seeing or hearing, I am experiencing bad lag or these type of things, one is listen to Paul's tips and tricks he'll share. But then the other piece that we do tend to see this happen the most is with third-party applications, because when we hand over these audio signals from client through server and then inject it into the Windows operating system, sometimes an application that is running might take longer to respond to this, we have seen. And so this is something as you hear feedback from your end users, hey, there is, we are experiencing lag. My first question is always, do what Paul did and confirm it's not a latency thing. And then my second question is usually, what application were they running and what peripheral were they doing? And that's always how I go through debugging these things when working with folks like you to kind of learn, because most of the time it ends up being one of those 3 in some capacity. And if we're only focused on, the network RTT or just a peripheral, we tend to miss the end-to-end use case. So, it's not a tooling trick, but just more of a how we approach addressing these.
Yeah, I speaking more generally, I remember, Jordan, there was a Microsoft application that we were self-hosting in our self-host, and it was batching up these, the input, it was batching up after 20, 40 milliseconds. So then it was I remember we were debugging that, oh, shoot, wow. Okay. Yep. That is a thing.
Yeah, it was when you would try and enter any keyboard control, it was around 150 milliseconds until you would see that character render on the screen, and everything in telemetry looked great. And it wasn't until we looked into, what was that application doing, is where we found the root cause. So that's not true everywhere, but in some cases, if you follow best practices, that's usually where I start looking.
That was a wake up call for me. I remember that. All right, cool. Yeah, thanks for that trick, Jordan. How about you, popcorn? Do you want a popcorn? Let's do popcorn, Paul.
Yeah.
So my trick would just be carrying on from what I said earlier, that Microsoft and Windows 365 and AVD have massive amount of global infrastructure, and a lot of it we don't talk about. That global backbone is one of the biggest in the world. We avoid the internet for you. And as Jordan says, that's all there to bring the cloud, bring the service as close as possible to your users as possible. So the key thing you can do is make sure that RDP is optimized for the small bit that you need to from the end user to the service front door, so the turn relay or the gateway. So making sure, as I mentioned earlier, RDP is locally egressed, so as close as possible to the user. We're not inspecting that traffic through TLS inspection. We're not going through proxies. We're not going through VPN tunnels. We're not going through secure web gateways, because that all degrades that path between the user and the front door of the service, where we can optimize from there for you. And the same goes on the Cloud PC side. We're kind of unique in that you've got to worry about both sides of that. But thankfully, we've done a lot of work, as I mentioned, to simplify this. There's just 2 subnets now that you need to concentrate on, and make sure on both sides that is done. And on the Cloud PC or session host side, if you optimize that and just locally egress it, you're on Microsoft's backbone within a split millisecond. We'll take it from there. So that's the key thing for me, and that can make an enormous difference towards end user experience, peripheral experience, etc. Bringing it towards what Jordan and my team are working towards, a like local experience.
Awesome. So basically, implement the subnets and keep testing.
And I forgot to mention, I'm in the middle of rewriting our connectivity documentation to make this much clearer, much easier to follow, and we're also working on tooling within the Windows app to help highlight to you, an admin, where that connectivity is not as optimal as it could be, and we'll guide you into how to remediate that.
Awesome. Okay, Serena, we'll go with you next.
Yeah, my tip for everyone is, if your end users don't need a full desktop, check out the new Cloud Apps feature. Plug. I, as an end user, actually prefer the remote app experience or the Cloud App experience. I already have a local desktop where I'm working from and need access to, remote applications. So I prefer this user experience. I think probably a lot of remote app or Cloud App users do as well. So we're in private preview, but we'll be in public preview soon enough. So please go check it out. I think your end users might love it. You might love it. We'd love to get feedback.
Awesome. Yeah, and then there's the blog there, in case you didn't capture. It's ak.ms/w365 Cloud Apps. Serena's awesome blog talking about the new upcoming offering. All right, Derek, what's your tip? What's your trick?
Ooh, wow. I mean, you guys all covered some pretty good tips and tricks. I don't know if I could honestly step it up, but I would say, really just piggybacking off of what you, Christian, or what Jordan said, right? Like, security is definitely a huge priority across Microsoft, right? And with secure by default, we really want to drive the point through that for IT admins and even end users here, right? Like, we really want to provide the best seamless and most secure, out of the box experience there is, right? For a Windows 365 Cloud PC or AVD VM. And I guess specifically here, with what we're doing now with the redirections, we want to make sure that by default we have these disabled, and we provide a pretty strong security environment for any new Cloud PC without you as the IT admin having to configure or manually configure all of these. But one of my tips that I would recommend is that if you really do value security, or you really feel like a lot of what we're doing at Microsoft for secure by default resonates with what you feel like you want your virtual desktop environment or even your Cloud PCs to have, for existing Cloud PCs that won't be receiving these new defaults, I would strongly recommend reprovisioning your VM if you feel like that's definitely a possibility on your end to receive these new defaults, or even use custom into GPUs to disable these redirections for these existing Cloud PCs as well. That's definitely something that I want to point out. And yeah, I think that really wraps up my case for tips and tricks here.
Awesome. Yeah, my tip and trick is for y'all to enjoy a nice July off, because we will be back with the next Windows 365 AMA in August. So take that, whether it's summer or winter where you are, make sure to take some time, and then come back with more questions that you may have. We'll be further preview with all the various things we talked today about with the short path and cloud apps, etc. So you can go to ak.ms/ama/Windows 365, bookmark and follow it so you can be notified of the next AMA. So from all of us, thank you so much for joining. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next time. Bye.